80% of the clicks that's happening on the homepage happens on the first 4 rows.
We need to make sure that we offer the best possible experience and the best possible stories for the users right on top of the page to make sure we keep them interested, we keep them engaged.
This is Dana, Director of Product at Morgenpost Hamburg. She's been leading a transformation in how news reaches readers on the homepage. But in the beginning, personalization brought more problems than solutions.
Problem for us. We just didn't know how the algorithm was really choosing the stories, which is not exactly what we want to achieve. What really convinced us, especially the editorial team, was how you can impact the streams, how much control we would have being able to move quickly.
How did you measure if this was working?
CTR is up by 32%. So people are actually reading more.
So Dana, where do you find the content that really engages with you, and why? Would it maybe be the MOPO print part there with Will Smith? Is that where you find your content?
So I would say usually I like to find my content online, but if I'm on vacation or like going somewhere by train, sometimes then it's really nice to have a printed newspaper. But yeah, usually online, and then I guess the story is aiming at what type of content is going well for us. So I would say the local stories, like the really local stories, and then everything that's like breaking news and of course soccer. Our readers love soccer and they're very engaged.
And I think soccer is one of the things that we're going to be talking about, and the number one team in Hamburg, HSV, might be one of the questions that are coming up. And we're going to be talking about you and MOPO. And MOPO, for the listeners, that's Morgenpost in Hamburg in Germany, where you are a director of product. What do you actually do in the newsroom, and what is your job?
Mm-hmm. So I'm responsible for the digital products that we offer. So, everything that's concerning the website, and then we're also doing paid content and newsletters and personalization, all kinds of different digital products that we offer. And I'm always in very close exchange with the newsroom about our topics.
What brought you into sort of product? I think there's also, I shared a meme with you about this guy who writes basically what the product manager does. And he basically says,
I have no technical ability.
So what are you being paid for?
The confidence that I have in my taste and my ability to express what I feel.
Is that the truth, or would you say there's more to it?
I think part of it is true. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not, a developer or someone who's like deep into the technical part, but yeah, so kind of trying to see where you can take the product to the next stage, or to evolve what you have. I like to think that.
Let's we're going to talk a little bit about the main topic today is personalization, and personalization is such a broad topic. I mean, we can talk about personalization in terms of reaching the right audience, to do like a propensity modeling for like your paywall and so on, but just to make it sure it's personalization when it comes to giving the right content to the readers based on interest or what's sort of like hot in the news at the moment. And we're going to go a little bit back, because for the listeners as well, we're going to be talking about a project that we've done together with Dana and MOPO and us in Kilkaya in terms of how we're looking at personalization. And one of the questions here is that we came to you with one hypothesis that we saw, not really a hypothesis, but one thing that we saw on the data from customers across Kilkaya, and that is 80% of the clicks that's happening on the homepage happens on the first 4 rows, meaning the first 4 stories on the top. And if you scroll further down, there's less audience, which means that those clicks not really are that valuable. So did those insights sort of change anything in terms of how you guys think about personalization and how you curate the homepage?
Definitely. I mean, the most important news or like breaking news, they're always placed right at the top. That's for sure. But I think, everyone would do that even if you didn't know these numbers, right? But knowing these numbers, I mean, we need to make sure that we offer the best possible experience and the best possible stories for the users right on top of the page to make sure we keep them interested, we keep them engaged, and we want to also either create people's habits of returning to our page or keep that habit up if they already have it.
When I think very often when I visit the newsroom, and it's been a lot throughout the years, one typical things, and always also with editorial analytics, the typical way that we see is that you have a desking team that is looking at the dashboard in terms of what's the performing of articles, and then changes are made on sort of the front page in a manual way. I'll change the headline, I'll do that. What's sort of like a danger if you're keeping like a homepage static or you're doing the manual curation? Like in the digital first world that we live in, what are some of the limitations versus doing personalization?
I mean, a limitation of keeping the page static is definitely that, especially for the heavy users, for the users that return to the page and returns to the page again, that they will return to a page that they have already seen. They are coming back after, I don't know, lunch break, for example, and then there's no new story for them. So, they won't be able to read anything new. So I think that's definitely a limitation of a system when you have only manual picks. And then I think people at this point are also expecting to see personalized content at this point. You're so used to it, to seeing it everywhere, all kinds of different platforms. And I think especially for breaking news situations, it's really important to get these infos to the people as quickly as possible by showing them at the top. But that's something you can also do with personalization.
I think you're spot on and pointing to something here, which is in the world that we live with, and especially for younger generation, even us millennials or my family, which is getting more used to the world of social media, where there's a feed which always knows what to give me, but we also need to talk about like the danger of that world. I mean, we're not saying that we should maybe replicate social media. We need editorial priorities, but there's an expectation here, and I think a lot of that has to the dopamine hit. You're instantly getting what you're looking for. Strike. It's a reward constantly. And we're thinking about the homepage. Maybe very often we're seeing the same stories. I'm coming in 5 minutes there, they're still there. Maybe in terms of the freshness, but then what would you say your thoughts are in terms of the dangers of maybe personalizing as well? Is that sort of like black box? Is it less control? What do you see sort of if we were to take something from the social media world into news? What are some of those dangers?
Yeah, I think, like you said, like black box was a big concern for us, and also for a first test that we did in terms of personalization. That was a problem for us because we just didn't know how the algorithm was really choosing the stories. We had lots of like Google Discover friendly articles pop up, which is not exactly what we want to achieve. And also like getting articles in there that are too old, with situations that are evolving very quickly. Let it be weather, let it be soccer, or let it be some big political event, then it can be really dangerous if you are displaying information that is just too old.
But was this sort of also one of the things that maybe kept? So editorial team is always critical in getting these projects off the ground. Would you say that the lack of control over being able to explain what the algorithm would recommend next would keep them away and keep them with, maybe not saying the old way, but the way that they're used to being able to have control over what we preview on the front page?
Yeah. So, I mean, when we started speaking about the Kilkaya front studio, we were just using this other tool to test personalization. We had part of it in our topics on the homepage, and then tested it in a sports section also on the front page. And that was where we were seeing exactly these problems. So for example, the sports content, we would just get information or like articles there about like a pre-match report, which is after the match clearly not relevant anymore. And then there was no really good way to exclude this type of content. You just had to do it manually because, you know, they're making a big effort every day to be up to date, up to speed. And when then you will just get old articles, that's really not very motivating for the team. So yeah, when we started speaking and saw, you know, the type of control that you can have, I think that was a big motivating factor after the first test that wasn't that successful for us.
And I think one of the things that at least accounts for my life working in sales to the editorial team is everything is about timing. And weirdly enough, the time of us starting speaking with you were sort of perfect because you were sort of in this limbo between wanting to do personalization, but then the control was important. And I just want to tell the listeners because this was all everybody on deck because I think that we came almost with a challenge with you because there was the one infra in Krakow in May, and we said we need desperately somebody to be on stage with us. We have this new great product that can do personalization and control. Can you do it with us? And can we be up and running in 1 week? And I don't think anybody would be sort of wanting to jump on that. But then, I mean, you have a German lady called Dana who's crazy enough to jump on an idea. What made you say yes?
Well, we like a good challenge, that's for sure. And I guess we already knew that we had a good databases because we're already using the analytics part of Kilkaya. So we knew that the data was already there. So that really helped us. And then what really convinced us, and especially the editorial team, was when we saw how you can impact the streams of what articles are actually ending up on the page, and that you can change that really quickly and just see how much control we would have to see, you know, what's going on and being able to move quickly to just have that transparency, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've seen and sort of I try to be implementing sort of content recommendations in the newsroom since 2017. There was a lot of nervousness about doing it that way, and there was very much linked to being able to have control over the algorithm because typically the vendor would give 3 or 4 options and you didn't really have the impact. And I think one thing that's important to make the first step that we see at least is you need to be able to link the algorithm towards the business goals. But maybe the most important part is the editorial integrity because you want your editor-in-chief to be able to explain why that reader were given that story. Because we end up in a world where you, Dana, and me will have 2 very different homepages, but it's going to be irrelevant with then the control of what the editorial or business rules are. But then what we did in that first part is that we focused around one of your pages, and one of the pages that we saw that had great potential was your specific page towards HSV. And just for the readers who don't know who HSV is, just let them know, who are they?
They're one of the 2 big soccer teams in Hamburg. And yeah, they have a lot of fans. And why we tested it on this page was because we have a lot of direct traffic on that page. Lots of people have this page bookmarked and will just directly go to it. So it is almost like a second front page for us, for the people who are really interested in this soccer team. So yeah, I think it made sense to try it out there.
Yeah, we also were, I think it was just before them going up to a higher league as well. So one of the things that we see, at least, and you will probably agree to this, one of the things that we're seeing is for industry that's been putting a lot of focus on traffic from social media, search, others, now also disruption with AI. The direct relationship we're able to build is really crucial, and at least personalization plays a role there. And one of the things that we saw there is that the HSV, after looking at analytics, they are really dedicated. They are loyal readers, and it's a perfect playground to do this. But then we sort of agreed on, okay, we have this league potential going up one league for HSV. Let's go on this. Like, what were your conversations internally with the editorial team initially? I guess they were either excitement, nervousness, skeptical. Like, how was that conversation with that team?
So honestly, pretty positive and excited, which was a bit surprising. Yeah, but especially the sports team saw this opportunity, or saw this as an opportunity for them, because the HSV page before was just a chronological page. You know, sometimes someone would change something, but you know, that was really not not something that would be happening every day. So, yeah, I guess they knew, okay, we will do this test, and if this fails, we'll just go back to this chronological order. And I think what was really important here, we got one of the sports editors, right in this, as like the project lead, pretty much. So we had a daily status meeting every day to discuss if we were happy with the type of content that was, you know, showing up in the streams, and making small changes, and talking about little bugs that we were seeing, or, you know, if we weren't happy with something in the design, or, you know, so we were actually able to make progress pretty quickly by doing this. And yeah, it was just really helping to have someone who was really making it his project.
Very often, I think that if we're talking about, especially if you're working at the front desk, you're curating the homepage. Very often, when they hear the word personalization, I think one thing that strikes their head is the robots are taking over. That's sort of my thought. How, like from the experience you did, how would you sort of have that conversation to get them on board?
Honestly, we just showed them the product, and were really transparent of what they could do with it, and involved them in the setup. And then they were really happy about how that went. And yeah, the sports team was happy to gain back control of the type of content that would come up in the sports section that we had done with this different tool before. So they were happy. And then we we did some more Front Studio implementation for other pages, not for other pages, for other parts of the homepage. And yeah, I think it was definitely, it takes some adjustment of like doing it in a different system, because it's a little bit of a different workflow. But I mean, it's really easy to use, and people warmed up with it really quickly. So
I would say that bringing in the editorial team is the route to success for
yes.
personalization, regardless. If you don't have them on board, nothing is going to happen, because like even with the tool that we provide, you have the opportunity to pin stories, meaning that they will be in their position. And it's very easy to go back to the old habit of just, I want to have this in a different world. And I think it's a massive change for a lot of people going to a homepage, and then you would get a different homepage than I'm having. And then it's sort of that control. But then once you're seeing the results of it and you're able to articulate why things are happening the way it is, I think it's easier to get the editorial team along. But then uh, what was sort of the change then in terms of like how you used to operate in, for example, your old CMS versus going into this new vertical with using Kilkaya and using then personalization? Like, what was the change from the old way to the new way, and the way the editorial team works?
Mhm. So I think I would say more flexibility overall, just because, you have more options. It's not all just chronological for the Hausfrau page, and for the front page, we have someone who is editing the front page of the time, but then to understand that what you're doing in there, the page is going to be different for every user who's opening the page. Yeah, I think to understand that, and then to be able to override the algorithm if you want to pin a story, if you want to bring up a story that's not in there. Yeah, so I would definitely say more flexibility.
How would you say that your editorial team today decides sort of you say that overriding the algorithm to pin a story, which means I'm basically saying that this article should be on the top regardless of what. I mean, we had different example on one thing that you heard me saying a couple of times is, in Norway we love our king and the monarchy, and if something happens to the king, it should be on top. But then, what sort of editorial rules have you set for yourself in terms of saying that this story is so important that regardless if I click and come back, it should still be there? What is sort of the thought process about what you pin?
So I think one example for us then would be coming back to HSV, when they got the promotion to go back to Bundesliga. Of course, that needs to be at the top, regardless if you've already read it or not. This is a story that needs to be at the top. And overall, the team was saying that they want stories up there that are new, that are getting lots of clicks instantly, and are ideally a paid article or something that we have exclusively. So I think these are like the factors that are determining whether or not the story should be there. Yeah.
And one of the things, especially I see in subscription being one of the more hotter revenue sources for publishers right now, is that one story might be super relevant, but it's buried behind another list of things that if you do the chronological way, I think the word, evergreen content. Did you guys see like an example where typically there was a case that would be very far down the page, actually would have made sense to have on top, and where personalization enable that?
Mm-hmm. We actually have a really good example for this because we had this interview with the coach from the soccer team. That was a paid story. And, it was a lot of questions about his like personal beliefs and things like that, So a story that is relevant for a longer period of time. And usually it would have vanished within 1 or 2 days. And we were able to pull the story up really easily, even after 4 weeks, because it was still going well and being read.
How would you say that as a product manager, and I'm sort of being the one that articulating the opportunities with something like this, how are you able to keep editorial integrity and their priorities in it? Is it mainly here the overriding of the algorithm, being able to pin? How do you say that? I think that trust is one of the most important currencies at the moment for why people seek editorial publishing. But then how would you say that like personalizations still keeps the editorial integrity? What are the biggest factors at MOPO using this?
I think at the moment it's, we can decide what we want to go into the stream. So we have a really big impact on this. So if we are not happy with the results, if it seems too random, I don't know, we can just take all the data that we have and define it in a way that and enter it in there for it to make sense. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about culture change. We have the famous word that here that change isn't just the technical part; it's cultural as well. And how did the team adapt to this? And now, even after running the test, how are they adapting to this new reality of then working with personalization in the same way with having editorial control? What's the change been like?
So on one side, I would say it was really cool to have this close exchange on these topics. And then when you do something like this, you are opening up more discussions about, what you want to do on the homepage, which was also cool. And to have these daily meetings in the beginning and getting all this feedback and kind of developing the stream more and more. Yeah, I would say that is one side. And then on the other side, it was really about trying out the tool. So for example, we had one person who was pinning all of the stories.
Typical.
Every single position was pinned. So there was really no personalization possible at all. And then, we have this dashboard where we can see how the CTR is evolving and how many clicks we're getting. And then the CTR was going right down. So that was, a real learning moment for the team that it does work. And then I think what was also important to understand that the editors, they're heavy users, and then they've read their own story and then they're like, why is my story not popping up? Because it's new and it's getting a lot of clicks, and why am I not seeing this? And to really just say we're not the perfect test group for this, because if you clicked on every single article on the site, of course if it's not pinned or makes sense for the algorithm to show it again, that you will then see something different.
This goes into also how you sort of tested and learned this, and sort of how did you measure if this was working, and were any of the results surprising to you?
So we were measuring the CTR, page views per session, and navigation clicks. And the CTR was the thing that was really motivating the team, when talking about this new tool, then sometimes it can be like, oh, another new tool, let's see. But then actually seeing the results was another really motivational boost, because the CTR went up. I just looked at the numbers for the past 4 months now, comparing that to the time period before, and CTR is up by 32%. So people are actually reading more stories and getting more articles and information on their soccer team, which is great.
And I think one of the things that we started with is that if you're able to do this from the very top, where majority of the clicks are happening, that's where you really tailor to a bigger mass of your readers. Whereas you do it further down the page, you're doing it for a very small audience, and being able to get the 32% of a bigger audience has a massive effect in terms of both what you're able to do. But I'm also interested in, it's very sort of with personalization, is very sort of, we're thinking about done. And some of the results we saw were fantastic. The increasing CTR, we saw that people were reading more stories compared to before, and then people were navigating the page less. They were getting the content they wanted to read. But how do you think about this sort of like business mindset in terms of the algorithm? Because today you might have non-subscribers versus subscribers. In my world, it makes sense to have different sort of thinking in terms of how you tune the algorithm. Maybe for the subscribers, you think more about providing them with the behind paywall articles to remind them of why they bought it, whereas with others, it's about finding the right time for the plus article to show to them. Like, how important is it being able to have different opportunity of fine-tuning the algorithm for the audience depending on what the business model is?
Yeah, so for all the different sections that we have personalized now, we have set up different rules. To achieve exactly what you just said. To have a different experience on the page for subscribers and for users who read free content on our page. Yeah, and I mean, that was that was really important to have different sets of rules there, and being able to exclude certain things.
How do you think this, like if you were to think about your own way of consuming news today, or how you consume social media, or the here, the newspaper. How do you think that it has an effect on people when it feels like there's something fresh constantly? One of the typical things we see being an analytic company is during the weekends, there's often a drop, and that has maybe to do with freshness of content. But then having something fresh, my hypothesis is that it has sort of like a dopamine hit, that it feels something is new. But then how is the new reality for the readers, you think, of MOPO now coming back to something that it feels like things are being updated? What are your own thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's interesting. What you just said about the dopamine increase. Yeah, honestly, that's a good question. But I guess why are we always scrolling so much on social media?
Yeah, it's, I mean, very often it's depends. It feels, I think that we're getting sort of like something new constantly. I mean, the industry is talking a lot about user need, and maybe we're scrolling it is to fill the user needs, waste my time. Can be a good user need because it's just coming something fresh. But I believe that we shouldn't replicate social media, but there's definitely something to do with feeling that is relevant to me. And I think the media habits has changed, and
Mm.
one of the sort of hypotheses that's been hitting me over time. But then, if you were to clearly, this has been a success for MOPO, and it's changing how the rhythm of the newsroom, how they're thinking about now how the feeds should be. And if you were talking with another publishers thinking about we need to rethink how we're having our homepage, personalization might be what we need to, like, how would you tell them to start, how to go about it? I mean, you surely have a lot of learnings from the test that you guys are doing and also for the future.
So first of all, I would say remove your hidden content. That's something that we did. We had these like content sliders for different topics where you could see on mobile like 1.5 stories, and then you already had to navigate to see more. And on desktop, you could see a couple more stories. But we changed that with the front studio, and we saw yeah, better results, which I guess makes sense. If you already see the content, you don't have to do anything. You just have to click on it. So that's definitely something that I would recommend. And then yeah, to talk to the newsroom because they have a really good, I don't want to say feeling because they look at the numbers constantly of what content is working and what content isn't doing as well. So to work really closely together with the product team and the editorial team.
Would you say that the editorial team is sort of the must-have
Yes.
to move something like this? That was a very quick yes, even before I finished. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What?
Maybe also just because it was so fun to do this project with my
Yeah.
coworker from the sports team. Yeah, but it was really, really good. Yeah.
And I think also from memory that some of the people from the sports team had like this very heavy print background, and even going the extra step here is even from digital, but now to like something being very personalized. Even having that change is actually pretty good.
Yeah. And maybe one more thing. I mean, personalization is the one thing, but just being able to show a new story to a reader when he comes or she comes back to the page, already makes such a big difference, right? Because you can show something new.
If you were to look back from when we called you to ask to be on stage in Krakow, that doing this in a very, I would say this is one of the faster projects I've been witnessing, at least, and we appreciate the sort of all the help on this. But then, would you have done something maybe a little bit different if you were to start over again? Any learnings that you would have done differently, or anything you think of?
Well, I think sometimes it's cool to have to move this quickly. It just makes some things easier. And then, we talk a lot about trial and error, but then you are actually there, because you don't even have that much time to overthink everything. So you will just have some design and test it. And then we saw one design that didn't work as well as the others. So then, okay, we changed it.
The next question is from a friend of mine in the industry, and I'm keen on your perspective on it. Is that a big user of social media, this person is, and do you think that we'll see homepages that are completely controlled by itself, or should always humans be in the loop? Mainly focus on the editorial. Do you think that it's right to let an algorithm control it completely, or do we need to keep the editors in charge here? What are your thoughts?
I think the human layer is really important because um, just what you said earlier about social media and what the dangers are. There you are also expecting something different from a publisher, and you will expect that you will be informed about, the breaking news, and that you will be able to find them, and that you will be able to find them at the top.
I truly believe, at least, that the day readers come for the trust that the editorial team is able to convince, to have. And I think that you have me and our CEO TJ sort of have this when we're talking about how we're going to be speaking about this, and we talk about human in the loop. But we actually don't like that saying. We think it's humans or editors at the helm being really in control over and working with algorithm to hit one, business goals, editorial integrity, and really being able to be up on the trust and being able to back that up. So that's important. But then for the news, I mean, we're talking now about content personalization, mainly of being able to do it from the top, but then we talk about personalization in industry in terms of propensity modeling. We're now talking about multiple modeler that you can now, we're having, for example, an article being able to be read up to you in a podcast, text to video. Like, I think it's even crazy saying 2 years because the industry is moving so fast. But what do you see sort of like personalization moving, and what do you think newsrooms need to, or news needs to do the next 5 years to keep up with the massive changes that we're seeing in media habits?
I think we need to on, but act quickly. So yeah, I mean, there was so much discussion now about AI and Google traffic, and well, at least until now, our numbers are looking really stable. We'll see, but we'll just have to adapt to a changing world, a changing technical world around us. And yeah, like you said, it's hard to pinpoint even where this all will go in the next 2 years. But yeah, I think to reevaluate where we are, and yeah, to also try new things.
I'm gonna, last time on the last podcast, I had Marcus Franz, the CTO of Ippen, on, and I tried a new format on the podcast, which he said he liked, and I got feedback from my listeners that they liked as well, and I like to call it rapid fire. And one of the things is just quick questions. You can say one word, you can of course elaborate on it, but then it's just a quick, nice change of the longer question. But what is one tool you use every day that makes your job easier?
Basecamp.
What is that?
It's a project management tool, but makes it really transparent for everyone to see where things are at. Yeah.
And what's the most overhyped buzzword in media right now?
AI.
I think we can agree on that. Do you have one person in the industry that inspires you?
That's a good one, because there are many people who I find really inspiring, but I want to say Sophie Jans. She is, I think her title is head of paid at Kika. Now Kika is a German, sports, mainly soccer site and also magazine. And she's super smart, has cool ideas, and is always great to talk to. So yes, I want to say Sophie.
I'm gonna ask for a reference there for our next guest on the podcast in this case.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's definitely on the list. So I will talk with you after this. And then last one, if you had to describe the future of journalism in one word, what would it be and why?
Well, it's 2 words.
You're allowed. You're allowed.
Okay. Constant change. Yeah. And I think it's obvious why.
Yeah, I think it was stay calm, you said, and then being able to change rapidly. That's one of the important ones. And like in the ending here, if you could leave one message for publishers about homepage strategy, what would it be? I mean, we talked a lot there about getting the editorial team included, being in control. Like if it could be like one thing that's really important to think about. I see a lot of publishers are setting up teams now to look at personalization, and it's actually one of the most critical strategies for publishers. What would be your one message?
So internally, I would say the newsroom on board and work closely with them, thinking about the users and what they see on the homepage. Try to offer the users something new and make it a good experience for them on the page.
Dana, we have a closing tradition on the podcast, and that is that the previous guest gets to leave a question for the new one. And I did mention his name. It's the god of all gods when it comes to AI in the newsroom, I would say at least. It's Markus Franz, the CTO at Ippen. And that was a really fun conversation talking about AI agents. And he left, of course, sort of very interesting AI questions, but interesting, I would say, is that what's intelligence for you or for your newsroom? And how does it fit with this kind of AI agents world into your strategy? So it's a comprehensive question. And what is really intelligence?
For me, intelligence is when someone asks good questions, and it's really valid for all kinds of roles and people and life overall. And the second part of the question, how it fits with AI agents. So I guess you also have to ask good questions for AI to get good results. And the more help we can get from AI for tasks that are just repetitive, the more time we can have for more creative tasks and asking more good questions.
I actually think that you're onto something, and I'll tell you why. It's I love listening to the podcast Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett, and he just had on some very interesting people. That one guy has scanned more brains than anybody in the world, and they looked into research that looked into how people interact with AI. And they had different groups in terms of where ChatGPT and AI generated the content, and then a second group where they had to then basically get this and write it themselves. And one of the things they were seeing is that if you interact with ChatGPT and just let it write for you, it actually has a very negative effect on both memory and can lead to many things. And I think asking questions and being able to communicate with and getting to the answer, that's a great way. And I still think about this, and we'll have an episode about this, like how a journalist should act with then this different technology. But then enough about AI, which is at least a hyped buzzword in the industry. But then you get to ask a question for the next guest, not knowing who that person is. It's definitely somebody in the industry, but feel free to whatever is on your mind.
Okay, then I would like to know from the next person what the most fun project was that they did in the past couple of months and why.
I love that. This is gonna be interesting. I'm gonna see who I'm gonna be talking with next, and I'm gonna ask that question. And I have to say thank you, Dana, for joining the podcast, and also for you being a bit crazy doing a project like this with us in Kilkaya. And then I think also the time set us into a path where we actually were able to do this, and we at least learned tons when it comes to personalization, how to do it on the top of the homepage. So we appreciate you sharing a lot of the learnings with the listeners as well. So thank you again for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I'm really excited to see where we're going to go with it in the next couple of months.